Welcome back to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Josh Walewa. My next guest is the CEO and co-founder of Technology Partners. The company started 28 years ago. She has won countless awards for her leadership and work through entrepreneurship, including St. Louis's most influential businesswoman in 2020. Her volunteerism is second to none, serving on boards such as Spirit of Discovery Park, STEM STL, and Missouri Technology Corporation, just to name a few. And Lisa also hosts an incredible podcast that I've really got a kick out of called Something Extra. It's a great listening, covering a variety of topics with some great thought leaders, really focused on leadership that can help you both personally and professionally. Welcome, Lisa Nichols.
Josh, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this conversation. You and I kind of talked offline, and the very first time we talked, we just really clicked and love your positive energy and love what you're doing for the students there at WashU. And so I've been looking forward to this. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate you too. I want to jump right in. And learn a little bit more about Technology Partners, your overview of your work there and that industry. If you could share a little bit with our listeners.
Absolutely. No, I'll be glad to. So Technology Partners has been around for 28 years. My husband and I, we spent the first 10 years of our career in Fortune 500 companies. If anyone went to the air show this last weekend or went to the new movie Maverick with all the F-18s, Greg and I started our careers at McDonnell Douglas. And while we did not work directly on the F-18s or the F-14s, we were part of the puzzle because he was an information technology professional and I was in corporate accounting. So watching that movie, now I have seen it 3 times. I don't get a commission or a royalty, Josh, for promoting, but it is such an excellent movie and talking about inspiring. It is super inspiring. But yeah, it just gave me such a sense of pride to watch that movie and these aircraft that are just, incredible and just kind of really defy your imagination of what is actually possible. But we started our careers there, and then we both worked for other Fortune 500 companies. And then 28 years ago said, let's take our learnings, let's take the things that we have gained in the last 10 years and our individual strengths, and let's form a company. So that's what we did. And fortunately, our values are in complete alignment. Our principles that we live by in life are in complete alignment. But I would say that our skill sets are complementary to one another. And that is really what's made it work, for 28 years. But yeah, so 28 years ago, we jumped on the entrepreneur wagon, founded Technology Partners, and we are a full service IT firm. So really what that means is we started more in IT staffing. So when companies such as Bear or MasterCard or Merritts or Cigna need, that augmented staff, that is what we do. We either have them on staff or we go and we recruit that individual. We also do full-time equivalent recruiting. But then about 12 years ago, we jumped into the solutions work. And so while staffing is still a huge part of what we do, solutions has really come along beside and is really complementary to that. But then secondarily, it really is as large, really, as the staffing side of our business. And what I mean by that, there could be, we've got various practices within our solutions group. And so it could be helping companies migrate to the cloud. It could be custom software builds, maybe modernizing legacy systems. We have a practice that is more data engineering, data science. And Josh, I didn't tell you this, but we're doing a lot of work with WashU. Nice. In that area. So, there never before in the history have we had as much data as we have today. But truly, if you cannot figure how to synthesize that data and use it to get a better outcome, then it's just data, right? And so that is what that group is helping companies do. And we're super excited about that. And our tagline is, we are harnessing the power of technology to improve the world. And I mean, you and I could sit here for hours, literally, and I could give you so many anecdotal stories of how that's playing out, and, the companies that we are doing business with and how they truly are using technology to make the world a better place, So it's an exciting place to be. Greg and I, when we started the company, it was really important for us to make sure that we built something that the best and the brightest people would want to work for us. And part of that is just treating people fairly. We have a very unique business model. So we could go into a lot more about that if you want to, but I'll just stop there and see what other questions you may have.
Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that context. After 10 years working with McDonnell Douglas, I think, didn't they do the B-2 bombers as well back in the...
Probably. I don't know. The Tomahawk missiles, they had several, they had several components of McDonnell Douglas with the aircraft. They've got the commercial DAC out on Long Beach. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they had the fighter jets, the Tomahawk missile. I mean, they did a lot. They did flight simulators, all kinds of things.
Well, I'm curious about, so you mentioned it, you and Greg had, you're aligned on your principles and your values. And in fact, this larger mission of really using technology to improve the world. But I'm curious about that complementary part, because for a lot of people who work on teams, they can often see that as a point of conflict when you're different or you approach things differently and you have different strengths. So how did you and Greg really align and see each other as complementary strengths and talents and skills towards building this business together? How did you kind of formulate or come to that understanding with each other?
Yeah, well, that is a really great question. And the first thing I will say is it's not easy. Because you're right. That can a lot of times be a place where there's conflict. And we didn't always do this right, Josh. I'm not going to say from day one that we figured it all out. We kind of figured it out as we went. But I traditionally have been more on the outward facing. So I sit on boards. I'm more like PR, brand exposure for technology partners, client acquisition. Greg is an amazing strategist. He played chess as a kid. And I will tell you, for any young people that are sitting out there listening, chess is a great way because you can see several moves ahead. He's always been able to see things in the future that, the typical person may not be able to see. And so that has really served us well, because even if you think about with a company, they say people, process, technology, right? So you've got to have those processes, you've got to have those systems, because without the systems, you do not have sustainability and you don't have consistency in your outcomes, Josh. So that is from day one, day one, because he was a technologist. Mm-hmm. We use technology to drive efficiency in the business. And that was from day one. So I always laughingly say we had systems. We had matching systems before like Monster or Dice or Indeed. We had those systems. And I can remember when we started, some of our competition was still working out of file drawers with paper and matching resumes to job requisitions. And almost from day one, we had systems. So Greg has a degree in artificial intelligence from WashU. And so we were using AI and machine learning to derive those outcomes. So that is one thing. And I could sit here from here till kingdom come and not be able to design a system like that. But, so I think we knew that obviously each other, we had different backgrounds and experiences in our Fortune 500 days that we were able to bring to the table. But then we also had things that we were just naturally more gifted at. And, here's what I would say. There's a couple things. So if there are people out there that are thinking, that maybe a partner team or a husband-wife team that we're thinking about working together, there's a few things that we've learned, Josh.
Okay.
And one is, just And even if it's not, I mean, people need to figure out what they're good at. What are your strengths, and stay in that swim lane. It doesn't mean that you can't ever do a lateral move, because you can, and you can learn other things, but really figure out those things that you're really good at and be excellent at that and stay in that swim lane. And so Greg and I, over the years, we've defined those swim lanes. And now on big decisions, we always come together on those big decisions. But from on a day-to-day, I do my thing and he does his thing. But it has to be in alignment, obviously, with the company objectives. But the other thing that I would say, because people ask me a lot, now, how is that working with your spouse? And one of the things that we did early on, and I would caution people not to do this, because this can be the bane of existence of an entrepreneur. There are never enough hours in the day. Mm-hmm. So setting up boundaries is really important. So in the beginning, Greg and I would strategize 24/7. So we are walking in the park at night. We're strategizing. We're on vacation. We're strategizing. And it became wearisome. And so several years ago, we said, this is really not good. This is not good for our marriage. This is not good just for our own psyche. So we set up meetings with one another during the week, during the work hours, just like what we would have with one of our colleagues.
That's right.
And that was a game changer. That truly was a game changer. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not doing a little bit of business or strategizing on a Saturday, because we will do that, but it's not 24/7 anymore. So just setting up those boundaries. And I would say for an entrepreneur, you got to set up those boundaries, because it will consume you. There's never enough hours. There are never enough hours in the day to get it all done.
Those are two great pieces of advice. You're kind of figuring your swim lane, your strengths, instead of trying to make up for with your deficits. And then, those boundaries on time. I really can appreciate that. I mean, I think, even in my life, in my situation, I can find myself laying in bed, talking about or thinking about work right before it's time to go to sleep. And so having a firm set of boundaries, stepping away and enjoying life, because what you do actually is really important to the world. You're supporting and helping and making a difference in a lot of people's lives, but you also got to take care of you and your loved ones. And so I can really value and appreciate that.
That is paramount. That is paramount. You cannot pour out what you don't possess yourself, Josh. So you've got to fill yourself up. You've got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your health. There was an old book written years ago called I Dare You. I don't know if you ever read that book. It's literally, I don't even know. I should try and find that book and pull it out. It's probably 7,500 pages, very small little book, but it was written by one of the Danforths that had founded Ralston, and he basically said, there's like the four-legged stool. You've got your health, you've got your relationships, you've got your intellectual, and you've got your spiritual. And he said, really and truly, your health, you cannot buy wealth. Wealth cannot buy health. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. If you get unhealthy, you can't fix that, right? And so, so keeping, and it's not just physical. I mean, I'm talking mentally, spiritually, emotionally, making sure that we're staying healthy.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. You can't pour out what you don't possess. And I think that's, again, it could be so hard as people want to do really good work. And I think we have parts of our culture where success equals, working 24/7 and never stepping away, but there's diminishing returns. And so, I value and appreciate that. I do want to ask you one other thing before I get into kind of your background and upbringing, and that's around innovation and some of the practices in your work that you do. So that's something that's really curious. It's something I'm curious about. In my field, I'm tasked with bringing innovative work or ways to support students, and you have, it sounds like, some unique models and approaches in the ways in which you do work. And so I'm curious about how you maybe would interpret innovation, or at least how does it show up in the work that you do?
Yeah, that is a great question. And we know how important it is, right, Josh? Because we know of companies that have not innovated and then, they're not around today.
Yes.
So, I think it is, you've got to take the time to kind of step back from the business or the work that you're doing. If you are not building that time in, and I call it think time, if you're not building that time in to reflect, then there's not going to be innovation because you're just going to continue to do what you've been doing all along. But taking the time seriously to step back and say, what is working? But innovation really, Josh, it's not just quantum leaps. We are really big on Kanban and Kaizen, and it's really incremental changes over time. Is really, now sometimes you will have a quantum leap. You will have a complete, new idea that comes in that you're going to pivot or maybe pivot a piece of your business. But we're constantly innovating in Technology Partners, constantly looking into say, where's the world headed? Where are our clients headed? And I will tell you, for us, our innovation truly has come so much from our clients. And because they'll tell you, how you need to innovate because you're asking them the questions, right? You're listening, you're seeking to understand what are their challenges. And then oftentimes the innovation comes out of that. I mean, there's so much. We could probably do a whole podcast, seriously, Josh, on innovation.
Yeah.
Because I always say it's either taking what is there and improving on it, right? Or figuring out a gap where nothing existed before. And that's where innovation comes into play. And I would say for us, I mean, we're constantly looking, just like the data science and data engineering practice that we opened 2 years ago. We just saw where things were headed in all of this data. But if companies cannot figure out how to synthesize that and bring that into a meaningful way so they can draw better insights, right, will help you make better decisions.
That's right.
And better decisions, hopefully, will result in better outcomes and better results. So just seeing kind of where the world was headed in that, we're constantly going, okay, this is an area we need to pay attention to. Greg and I talked this weekend about some products out there that do more simulation. And we feel like that's probably an area that we need to move into that can really not only help our business, but help other businesses as well. Simulating, if you change this variable in your business, what is going to be the outcome of that? And those simulations will help you then with your course of action going forward. So
that's really smart. Yeah, to help you anticipate things that you don't have to play out in the real world because you can run them ahead of time. I also think I love this, your clarity on this, that, occasionally you do have the big moment, the big changes, but the incremental changes is where real innovation happens over a long period of time. And I love your, I'm stealing this from you. I have to think about this, how it applies to my work, but really listening to your clients, listening to your consumers, because they'll tell you what their needs are and where they're going, and just some really great opportunities for innovation there. I do think that people look for like the Facebook or the Uber, but it's not always the Facebook or the Uber. It's the small steps over time that make big changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can steer a huge ship over time with those small little changes. I'll give you another example of this, Josh, while we're talking about it with innovation. We sponsor what is called the HMG, the Hunter Miller Group CIO Summit. We've done that for almost 10 years now here in St. Louis. And what we kept hearing in these summits from these top IT leaders is that next layer of management underneath them, that next layer needed a little bit more leadership coaching. And I will tell you, studies show that at the age of 27, the average age of a supervisory type role is 27. but people do not get leadership training till they're in their 40s. And so, in IT and in technology, and I'm sure it happens this way in other industries as well, but oftentimes what happens is you take your best tech architect and you say, okay, you are really good at what you do. Now we're going to put you over this team and you're going to lead this whole team of people. Well, this tech architect is like, I've never been taught how to lead people. I don't know how to lead change in an organization. I haven't been taught the visionary skills that I'm going to need to help motivate these people. I mean, and so this was 2018 that we started talking to a partner of ours in New Hampshire. And we said, can we as technology partners, can we help fill that gap? Can we help fill the gap there? Because we hear that this is a challenge. This is one of the things that's keeping CIOs up at night. That succession plan in the organization and more the leadership skills. And so we're talking to this partner in New Hampshire. We launched the Technology Leadership Experience in 2019 to take high potential IT people and teach them not how to program in Python, not how to program in Java, but really teaching them those leadership skills so that we're preparing them to move up through the organization. And so I'm really happy to say we are launching our 10th cohort of that, Josh, in July. So that was, again, an innovation within our company and a little bit of I wouldn't say it was a pivot, but it was definitely a value add that we put into our ecosystem to better serve our clients.
That's exactly it. You saw, and you started off by saying, one of the ways of doing innovation is seeing a gap and then finding a lane or a way to meet that need that maybe wouldn't be as intuitive for your company as it stood at that time, but now you're in your 10th cohort. And you're exactly right. I think every industry takes good high performers in a particular area and puts them in leadership roles, and that's the lag right there. And so Again, I'm taking notes here because I'm trying to think about, again, how do I implement some of these approaches or work with other leaders in our company, in our university to implement the same. So I appreciate that. So you're doing some free consulting and coaching for me here. Thank you, Lisa.
Good. That's, you know what? And Josh, that you've already mentioned that I host the Something Extra podcast, which I love. And I laughingly say every time I have a guest on, I feel like I've been through therapy. So, I'm a really high growth mindset type person. And just traditionally in my whole career, one of the ways that I have learned is through other people. And so I'm grateful that I'm able to give you a few little tidbits this morning too.
Very good. Well, I appreciate it. Bill me later. No, I'm just
Yes.
All right. Well, I do have one more question here before we get into the big question here. It's really about your backstory and kind of where you grew up, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for asking that. Yeah, I grew up in a really small town, western town in Kentucky, I grew up as an only child to amazing parents, very loving, very nurturing, grew up with Christian values. You and I've talked about our faith. That was a non-negotiable. And, I've grown in my faith over my lifetime. But just amazing parents, hardworking, very not self-serving, very much others people, serving. I mean, my mom, she was the first person, if you stumped your toe, she was the first person to bring you a meal. I mean, I just watched my parents serve other people my whole entire life. Work ethic. My mom got sick. It will be 8 years ago. 8 years ago this month, as a matter of fact, 8 years ago this month. And my dad, at the time was 84 years old, Josh, and still working.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Such a hard worker, and just grew up just watching that and personal responsibility. I mean, I've got so many stories I can share with you where dad, made sure that I took personal responsibility for the mistakes, that I made. And so, yeah, just an amazing childhood.
It sounds like you have some really amazing parents. And, one of my favorite people, Jill Stratton, is from Kentucky. So I guess Kentucky's doing something pretty all right.
Yeah, I think they're turning out good people. Greg and I both were born and raised there and went to college there. And then we were recruited out of college to work for McDonnell Douglas. So that's what brought us to St. Louis. And I'm really glad. Let me just say, I love my upbringing. I love growing up the way I did. I will tell you, this is home now. We love St. Louis. And literally, Josh, when we got here, and I'm dating myself here, but 38 years ago is when we landed in St. Louis. And we said, we'll probably stay here for 2 years and then we'll move somewhere else. But 38 years later, we're still here because St. Louis has so much to offer. It's where we raised our children, but I mean, it's the arts here, the culture, the Cardinals, the Blues. I mean, and truly we have found it to be just an amazing place to put our roots down and build our business. People are very giving. They want to help, very philanthropic. It's just a great city. It's a great city to live. So.
Yeah. I agree with you. I've been here almost 20 years, and for many of the same things that you just shared. I do want to just make a quick note before we go to our break that your parents show up in the work that you do. Obviously, I mean, just watching your interviews, listening to your podcast, reading articles about you. You are super involved and connected with the community, not just in the running your company and the important work that you do there, but also just supporting so many areas and interests around our region and beyond. And so I love the idea that those values just get transferred and continue to work through you, I'm sure, and through your kids as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. And I'll just say one thing before we go to break. My husband grew up the same way. So Greg grew up the same way. So even something that we didn't talk about, we did start dating in high school, Josh. And Greg, even in high school, we both had an entrepreneurial bent, and we don't have time to get into all the things that we thought we were going to start and that sort of thing. But I mean, I remember even in high school, Greg said, if we could build a company one day and do really well, then we can do more good in the world. And so that was a vision even back in high school. And, and it really, truly, it's not about us. It's not about us. It's obviously, there are definitely things that come with owning your own business, right? And doing that. But really the bigger purpose is how can you impact people? How can you impact families? And, we have 400 people that work for us. So there's 400 families that we've been able to impact. And then that's the tip of the iceberg, because then you think about those people impacting our clients. I mean, there's a multiplicity effect there. And then as we've been able to do better as a company, we're able to do more, as you had mentioned, in the community to build our world and to make a better world.
Absolutely. It's really inspiring. Thank you. So we're going to take just a short break and we'll get back with the big question. All right. As you know, this is the Best Worst Thing podcast. Lisa, so this is the time where I ask my guests to talk about, to share a story about a personal or professional setback or both. And it's really three parts. It's what was the setback or the challenge? How did you work through it? And then what are the lessons you learned along the way that you would like the listeners to walk away with? So, Lisa Nichols, what's your best worst thing?
Yes. Well, I was thinking about this, Josh, and I could give you so many, but I'm going to pick one. I mean, we had offices that we opened that failed, that did not go forward. That's definitely a setback. How do you come back from that? We had a controller way back in the day that embezzled from us. Fun. And then you're like fun. Trying to figure out where you are and financially and that. So we've got a lot of things, but I would say And I don't even call it a setback. Let's just say it was a little detour. It was a little detour that we weren't expecting. Okay. We've got 3 children. Our first child was born in 92. Our second child was born in 93. We started Technology Partners in 95 and 94. And we had our third child in 95. So get that, 92, 93, started the company in 94, third child born in 95. Here was our detour. Our third child was born with special needs. She was born with Down syndrome. And that's not something we had planned for at all, Josh. And it's not something that you expect. About 1 in 800 children are born with Down syndrome. It's an extra 24 chromosome. It's a Something Extra podcast. Allie was the inspiration for the podcast. But I think, so that's what happened. And it was definitely a shock. It was definitely, we definitely had a lot of questions. We had no prior experience with people with Down syndrome. So we had a lot of questions. But yeah, since then, how did we get through it? Well, the biggest thing is really, and you and I talked about this, it was our faith, because I knew that this was no surprise to God, and if he formed her, if he allowed her to be formed that way, then that is the way that she was supposed to be. And I will tell you, at the time I had so many questions, and Greg and I since fortunately have had the opportunity to talk to a lot of parents, that we get asked to talk to a lot of parents that find out that they're having a Down syndrome child, or they have a Down syndrome child and they just need someone to talk to. And being on the other side, she's now 27. There's some things that happened during that time. I remember just having all these questions about what is the future going to hold for her? What if, I can, down to the granularity of what if she's got 2 older siblings, they're going to be driving. What if she's not able to drive and then she's really sad? Or what if she never able to get married? Or, what is that going to mean? Or what if the kids are mean to her at school? I had all these questions, all the what ifs, right, Josh?
Yeah.
And there was an older lady, a little bit older than us, that I will never forget. Her name was Sharon. And shortly after Allie was born, I remember Sharon and her husband, Steve, being in our house. And she said, honey, you are worrying about things that may or may not ever happen. And she said, I would just really caution you not to spend your energy on things that may not ever happen. She said, I would just say to you, learn to take one day at a time. And I will tell you, Josh, I've never forgotten that. And even to this day, even if you are going through something really, really difficult, just do what you can right now in this moment. And sometimes that's all you can do, and not look too far ahead. And even to this day, people say, well, will she live independently one day? I'm like, I'm not sure. She doesn't want to do that right now. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'm not going to spend my energy worrying about things that may not ever happen. So yeah, it definitely my faith. It came down to one word, and it's trust. I'm going to trust God with her, and I'm going to trust God that all of this is going to be okay. And 27 years later, I can tell you, if you see any of my social media posts, she's one of my greatest teachers in life. She is joy. This girl has so many something extras, and the things that I have learned from that experience, truly, just on and on. Have you ever heard, Josh, the poem, Welcome to Holland?
No, I haven't.
All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but because it may help somebody.
Okay.
You know, it may help somebody that's listening. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, the Michelangelo, the gondolas of Venice. You may learn some handy phrases. It is all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. A flight attendant comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm not supposed to be in Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. I'm not supposed to be in Holland. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place. It's just different. So you must go out, you buy new guidebooks, you must learn a whole new language, you will meet a whole new group of people. It's just a different place. It's a little slower pace than Italy, less flashy. But after you've been there for a while, you catch your breath and you look around and you begin to notice that it has beautiful windmills and tulips and Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy. They're all talking about the wonderful time they have there. You know, here's the thing. You know, if you spend your life mourning the fact you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the special place of Holland. Mm. And, you know, I will tell you, Holland is beautiful. Yes. It is beautiful. And God knew precisely what he was doing when he put Allie in our family. And so, yeah. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on just the learnings and the things that I have learned from this girl.
Well, I got to say, Lisa, powerful, you, amazing. You and Greg were the perfect parents chosen for Allie. And from what I've heard, Allie is an amazing 27-year-old, amazing, amazing woman. And I just feel like that's the best. There's no worst about it. It's just the best.
It's the best. Yeah. So it really, like I said, it's a detour. I wouldn't call it a setback. I wouldn't call it anything other. It's just a little detour. And
Holland is beautiful.
Holland is beautiful. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I would not have it any other way.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. How can people follow you, get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to stay connected with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. Lisa Nichols, my Something Extra podcast with Lisa Nichols. You can find that on any the major platforms, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google, on all the major platforms. Technology Partners. If you want to learn more about Technology Partners, the URL is technologypartners.net. So just make sure you put the .net in there. A lot of times people put .com and you won't find us that way. But if you want to learn more about Technology Partners, please check out the website. And again, I would love to connect with people. Send me a LinkedIn request and love to stay engaged there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate our time together. Thank you for listening to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Josh Walewa. Music is produced by Josh One. You can follow him at Boomnote on Instagram and Twitter, and Josh One on Spotify. Our episodes are edited by Cooled Jets Music. You can follow him at Cooled Jets Music on Instagram. Our marketing is designed by Francesca Daniels. You can find her at FrankandKitty24 on Instagram. And our overall design is by Inspired Design with Ryan Daniels. You can find them at getinspired.design on Instagram. Thank you for listening to The Best Worst Thing.
This one's for the good times and this one's for the bad. This one's for the day that was the best we ever had. This one's for my good friends and this one's for my foes. The ones who get up on your skin